Ed Yanka, here to my right, is the Director of Communications and Public Policy for the American Civil Liberties Union of Illinois, a position that he's held for more than a quarter century. In 2013, Ed served as Vice Chair for Illinois Unites for Marriage, a diverse, multifaceted coalition of organizations that help to ensure the freedom to marry for all couples in Illinois. From 1987 until 99, he served on the staff of the American Bar Association, spending most of his time as a special presidential assistant in the ABA's Office of the President. Been very active, and we can hear more about Ed in the coming moments here.
Good evening. It's really wonderful to be here, and Professor Alter to be here with you, and Rima and Jackson to be part of this panel. I want to draw back a little bit. You've heard a lot about the tactics that are being used on campus and around the issues of Israel and Gaza. And I want to draw back a little bit and talk more generally about the attacks on speech and that we're seeing from this administration, and a little bit of what's behind so much of this, because I think it all informs the discussion that you've just heard. And I want to start by reminding you all that on the day that he was inaugurated to his second term, Donald Trump declared in his inauguration address and then signed an executive order in which he said that his administration was, quote, restoring the First Amendment in the United States. And of all the lies he's told, and we could be here all week and you can't time me on those, the reality is this may be the biggest one. Because from the very beginning, it's been abundantly clear that what he intended to do was to use the awesome power of the federal government to limit any speech that questioned his authority, that questioned him, or questioned his ideology. And we've seen that in a number of different ways. We've certainly seen it at universities in the way that you've already heard described in terms of attacks on speech around particular issues. But think about the way in which we've also seen the use of cutting off of grant funds towards research that's been, exposing issues of racism, that's looked at issues around gender inequality, that looked at issues of gender identity, that looked at any kind of issue in any way that might actually lay bare the mistruths and the mythology that he and his administration is using to govern. We've also seen them use that power to try to shut down and close down large law firms who, during his first term, on a pro bono basis, took many of the cases which challenged many of his most aggressive and most abusive and most harmful policies. So this time you see the attacks on firms, some of which have foolishly, in my view, bent the knee and made a deal with this administration, only to have a court say that those agreements aren't enforceable and they're left holding the bag. But what you have is less legal resources and firepower going to challenge a number of the policies in which we're seeing the administration be abusive, be authoritarian, and engage in practices which harm people across the United States. We're seeing again this limitation on the ability of even museums and libraries to engage in works which again just make clear that the so-called precedents and precepts upon which much of the Trump administration builds its policies just simply aren't true. They fired the Librarian of Congress. They fired the Librarian of Congress, arguing that she was putting works in the library that were pornographic, when part of her charge is to put a copy of every single publication in America into the Library of Congress. And of course, they tried from there to limit, what is available and what's not. We're seeing this rewriting of history at the Smithsonian, where, it is no coincidence, I think, that this begins with the president trying to rewrite the history of his own impeachments, as though they did not happen, right? And so this kind of thing is constantly being used, again, to limit anybody who might question, either his history or his telling of history. And of course, even to the extent of, as you know, recently, the federal government has removed the pride flag from the Stonewall Inn National Monument. I mean, the idea that somehow Stonewall doesn't play an important role in LGBTQ history in this country because Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about it. We're also seeing this even in the media. Everything from the way in which the president is putting his thumb on the scale to ensure that his favorites, his supporters are in control of large swaths of the media. And it wasn't like the media was doing a great job of covering things before. But, what we're seeing now is this sort of government control. The White House literally commented today on a rumor that CBS was thinking about hiring Liz Cheney to be an analyst. And because Donald Trump hates Liz Cheney so much, somebody at the White House was trotted out to say, has Bari Weiss lost her mind? I mean, it's crazy. And of course, we also saw today, or we've seen at the White House and the Pentagon, literally the replacement of regular reporters with pro-Trump outlets, which simply ask the president the questions he wants. This is about avoiding any sort of accountability or transparency. And what we're seeing at the end of the day is using that in order to be able to project messages that somehow their recognition or their history is the only one that's acceptable, is the only one that government will favor, and will therefore, anything else is somehow dangerous and a dangerous opinion to have. I'm going to close, and it's a little bit off topic, but I just can't resist because it's one of my favorite hobby horses of late. And that is that, as you know, America is about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. The President of the United States believes that the way to mark that occasion is with an MMA fight on the White House lawn and a car race around the Capitol. The fact of the matter is that it is this bastardization of our history and our culture to somehow align with him that, is creeping into everything that is happening. And it's being done because he's limiting speech and opportunity for transparency in all these other ways. And we have to resist that at every turn. Thank you very much.